Hello and welcome to the Metroidvania podcast. My name is Professor Q.
And this is Callbreath from the Metroidvania subreddit and Discord.
And this is Nick from the other podcast, The Cutest on Saturdays.
Yeah, the other stream we do on Saturday. And today we're just showing some footage of 3 games that I played this last month. I also have a 4th game on there. And if the 4th game shows up, that means we've gone way too over. But I didn't want it to just go black after we ran out of time. So if we get that far, then you'll get to see the 3rd game. And I guess I'll just... Oh, go
I
ahead.
always thought it was really satisfying how the plywood doors on the bathrooms just splinter apart.
As you watch me playing this, also, how many bathrooms actually are made of wood? Because that suggests that they're made of wood here.
Well, it could be like particle board.
So this is a recording from my actual playthrough when I was reviewing it this past week. And whenever I go into the bathroom, you'll see me blow up everything in the bathroom because why wouldn't you do it?
You have some sort of vendetta against bathrooms.
Oh, man. Especially these bathrooms.
Well, if you think about it, this game, I feel, has the most realistic bathroom frequency and layout of any game I've ever played. They're like in every single area you go.
This game is actually really ironic in that sense because they talk about all the time in like the notes that you find that the oldest house is constantly changing. Like it's like Dracula's castle, and yet it somehow ends up being more of a building that you would kind of imagine it actually existing than a lot of games that have buildings like this.
Sure. Feels more grounded, even though it's hardcore fantasy, which, by the way, that thing that you were just picking at, all of this stuff is tied to a puzzle in the next room over.
Oh, really? I actually did not solve that puzzle. No, I was playing with that stuff. I'm like, what is this stuff for?
Yeah, you gotta maximize your luck and then spin a roulette wheel, and if you do it right, you unlock a new outfit.
Oh, is that what that is all about? Okay, I never figured that out, or I didn't bother. I was sure that there had to be something with it. I'm like, why would they have a room full of just trinkets that you could play with unless there was a purpose to it?
Well, I mean, to be fair, I wouldn't be surprised if they made a room full of trinkets you can only play with.
Sure, yeah, why not?
Like the Harmony of Dissonance room that you just throw all the furniture in.
Yeah, just a satisfaction room.
Yeah, that room is so weird in that game. It's so out of place. You're a Belmont inside Dracula's castle, and you find an empty room. And it's like, I think I'll put some of the furniture I've been carrying around in there. By the way, how is he carrying around all that furniture?
Yeah. Maybe he was just sick of carrying it around. It's like, well, this seems like a fairly empty room. I'll stash it here.
I just realized her collar has upside-down pyramid lapels on it.
Marshall's collar?
Yeah.
I actually had not noticed that. So this is me while I'm still on my melee build, so you'll see me kind of doing that strategy on that. But anyway, enough about the game. What's that?
No, then I like the... So you didn't go after the healers before trying to take down everybody else?
No, I killed them fast enough that it didn't matter.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how much damage you do with your melee, because that's nothing I ever spec'd into.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, what are we talking about today?
So the first topic that we wanted to talk about was the effect of social media on game development. And I wanted to preface that by saying that neither of us are experts in either social media or game development. I mean, Caldrath, you probably know the most about game development out of the 3 of us, right?
Probably, even though I haven't actually completed anything.
I mean,
I've taken the shot and not really gone anywhere with it.
Yeah, so you wouldn't have any insight on like publishing or social pressures or things like that. So I'm going to be honest with you, Nick. I actually did not figure out the healers until probably later than this part of the playthrough.
Oh, really? You didn't
No.
realize the orb was healing them?
I saw the plus on them, or like, I'm sure I noticed at some point, but see, I killed it fast enough, so I'm like, it must not matter.
Your burst damage is high enough, you don't have to worry about healing.
Right, exactly. No, I figured it out eventually, though.
It's not really a big problem until you fight the beefy enemies.
Right. But anyway, so social media effect on gaming. So this, as Nick said before the stream, we're going to be talking more about the abstract of why it might have an effect and what effect it could be having, rather than an actual researched insight of what's actually happening.
Yeah, we're not talking specific interactions or anything like that.
So, does anybody want to start on their thoughts?
I mean, I just like when I originally thought of this topic, the thing I actually thought about originally was Kickstarter, which isn't necessarily traditional social media, but it's a new way to communicate directly with gamers and present a project. And I feel like that accomplishes a lot of the same boxes, or it checks the same boxes as like Twitter, because Twitter, you're presenting something, you're not asking for money in that situation. But I think because of that, I kind of considered Kickstarter a piece of social media.
I think you're right. One other thing that I was thinking about as you were saying that was, like, once upon a time when you wanted to make a game, you had to go into a room full of executives and pitch your idea and have them greenlight it. With Kickstarter, you're essentially making players be your executives, and thus, like, you could say that in a corporate environment, those executives have an influence of how the game turns out, and so I guess there's a difference there now with Kickstarter compared to the way games used to be made, and how that might change the way the game is done. Also, this is the first time my weapon mods are full, and I was confused.
Oh, it's the first time you suddenly realized it's not unlimited?
Yeah, I'm like, why isn't it picking up? What the crud? Anyway.
The other thing about Kickstarter is it allows people who aren't really vocal to like share their opinions in a like less direct way, and also they like have to put their money where their mouth is. Like if it's just on like Twitter or on forums or something like that, then it's just like people being vocal with their opinions, and it doesn't really cost them anything to do that. Whereas on Kickstarter, you have to like actually be invested in whatever you're voting for with your money, but you don't have to like put yourself out there.
Yeah, it's a much more curated interaction than something like Twitter would be, because they're not directly communicating with anybody. They're still kind of presenting to a board, but the board is thousands of people sitting at home reading their computer. Yeah. But just in speaking to how Kickstarter has impacted game development, I think early on it was kind of an undeniable good with very few downsides, but I feel like now it's kind of gotten to the point where you have to present a game almost to a certain model to find success, and I feel that's potentially hazardous to the development of your game.
Yeah, perhaps. I think it's less that... I'm going to make the argument that it was always that way. The difference between early Kickstarter and now is that people have identified what those trends are, whereas early Kickstarter, it was you could put whatever you want up there, and then the market kind of decided. But now there's a culture that's established, and so putting yourself out on Kickstarter has to follow those trends, otherwise you just don't get noticed.
Yeah, there's some saturation, and there's also some loss of trust.
That too.
After like Mighty Number 9, such.
So Unknown V2 thinks that the devs aren't taking things as seriously now. And many projects aren't really that great after release. That's where the loss of trust comes in. Is some people look at Kickstarter as free money, and then I don't know, maybe you deliver a product, but is it a product worth actually having?
Well, like the vast majority of everything is crap, but in Kickstarter, like you paid for that crap before it got made, so it like hurts more.
And also, I feel like if you kickstarted a project, you're more emotionally invested than you would be otherwise, and that emotional investment is going to equate to a more pronounced feeling of getting burned when they don't deliver what was promised.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it also like kind of reflects poorly on you emotionally if like the thing that you thought was going to be a good investment turned out to not be.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, you're bad at evaluating. Although, I mean, I'll be the first to admit I am probably terrible at evaluating whether or not a project is going to be successful or not. I mean, I know early on I backed a couple of projects that went nowhere.
Yeah, but most people don't want to admit that.
Right. Certainly doesn't feel good.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. You always have the buyer's, I don't know, justification. What do you want to call that? There's a word for it. I just can't think of it.
Well, also, I think it's much more it's easier to kind of feel the sunk cost when you're already invested in the game, and so you're gonna cling to a failing project much longer than you would normally. So,
Yeah.
like if like there was a project that was supposed to be done in a couple of years, but it stretches out to more than a decade, but you've invested so much in that project, you're still going to defend it, even though, for all intents and purposes, it deserves a lot of the criticism it's getting.
Right, right. Yeah, there's no project like that, though.
No, I don't. I mean, I'm not talking about anything in particular. I'm talking in the abstract.
Yeah. I've done a lot of Kickstarters, and I think the best strategy is to just look at it, you fund the game if you like think the world like would prefer the world to where that game exists to the one where it doesn't, and then you just forget about it until it releases.
Yeah, that's actually a great way to do it.
It's I think that also with social media, it's easier to get to know the developer as the Kickstarter is happening. Like, for instance, some of the developers on the Our Metroidvania Discord, if they kickstart their game, I'll be like, "Oh yeah, go get this," because I know that I know this developer. I know that they're hardworking. They update often. You know, there's a lot more that can go behind a Kickstarter besides just putting it up and hoping that people jump in on it. As from a consumer perspective, I think that there's information out there that can help you make that investment choice, and it is an investment. It's essentially the longest pre-order.
Oh yeah, it straight up is. Except it's going directly to the dev instead of a third-party go-between.
Right, Amazon.com or GameStop. One of these things is doing better than the other.
It is well, though GameStop has been doing pretty good lately for some reason.
Brief period of time, yeah.
I made like $4,000 on GameStop in the last week.
Wow.
See, there you go.
Gosh, that's... Maybe I should have jumped in. I don't know. We don't want to change the subject of this stream, though. So anyway, good or bad things about social media affecting games. Let's go to that. Oh gosh, where did I read that? I don't want to repeat something without citing the source. You mentioned something from Mark Brown. Maybe you should talk about that before I try and find what I was going to say.
Well, he made a video, Game Maker's Toolkit, in which he was talking about, I don't remember what the overall topic was, but it was generally protecting gamers from themselves. They think they want something, but the reality is they don't actually want that thing because it would negatively impact the gameplay. I believe the example he gave was XCOM 2. They put some pretty strict time limits on some of the missions to push the player forward. And that was because without the stress of the time limit, players would hunker down and just crawl through levels. Like, they would just go one little step forward at a time, clear out anybody they could at the perimeter, take one tiny little step forward. And that wasn't a fun way to play the game. It was a safe way to play the game, and you ended up with fewer casualties, but it wasn't fun. And so to, quote-unquote, protect the player from that, they instituted these strict time limits where you had to get everything done within 5 or 10 turns, or reinforcements would show up. And that forced the player to leave the comfort zone and push into the levels aggressively. And the way that ties back to interactions between devs and players is if players are like, I hate this, I hate this, I hate this, and the devs go, well, okay, well, if you don't like it, then we'll take it out, then that could conceivably not just ruin the game for those that liked those timers, but also ruin the game for the people that thought they hated those timers because they didn't actually understand why those timers were there.
Given the opportunity, a player will optimize the fun out of the game.
Precisely.
Yeah, that's me in a nutshell. As I'm going to a hiss or a bureau alert right now to find out that I really hate bureau alerts.
Yeah, they're just filler. I mean, there's a fair bit of filler in this game, but it's also the vast minority compared to everything else.
Yeah, it's easy to ignore, I suppose. Especially if you just build launch, then you don't have to worry about how you build anything else.
I did on my second playthrough. I mean, I've told you this like 4 times now, but Shield is a viable mid.
Oh, I know.
Build. I mean, it's very satisfying to.
No, I stayed melee until I got to the anchor boss, and then I was just like, you can't use any of the powers that I've invested in on this boss. It's just.
I mean, I beat the anchor with 1 level in telekinesis last round.
Yeah. Well, Anyway, so on that subject of Mark Brown, who you quoted, the gaming Brit, it was the person I wanted to quote. He was playing Kingdom Hearts 3, and in his review of Kingdom Hearts 3, he said, I kind of feel like this game does everything that everyone wanted and expected out of Kingdom Hearts, but it didn't do enough of what people didn't know they wanted out of Kingdom Hearts. As in, like, what made Kingdom Hearts 2 Gaming Brit special in the first place was that it showed him something new, it gave him something special, and what made it special was the fact that he didn't know he wanted it. Whereas Kingdom Hearts 3 was just completely based on what his expectations of what Kingdom Hearts 3 should be.
Right, they just checked off a fan want checklist.
Right.
Watching you do the tap, 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 tap thing to keep your Pierce charged up so you could snap it off fast is rather amusing.
Actually, it was me not knowing how Pierce works. So I was tapping the button like I was firing a different gun.
This seems to be a theme on this episode.
Oh man, you would know. I'm doing my second playthrough on it because I finally got a PS5. The haptic feedback in this game was so satisfying for all of these guns because it was different for each gun, and the amount that adds to the experience. It's weird, but that controller really is the standout of that console.
So should I just get that controller and hook it up to my PC?
Well, I mean,
the big question. If it works.
The haptic is coded into the PC version, absolutely, which I'm sure is going to happen because people love this for good reason. Are you trying to punch him through the bookshelf?
It worked.
Oh, it did?
He moved, but it worked. But anyway, that's the problem I have with developers being so focused on player feedback, is that if the player dictates what, like if they make a custom game through you, which I know is a lot of players' fantasies, then they can't be surprised by it. Like, it's...
Well, and that's also why I feel that you run into trouble with Kickstarters, because what is Kickstarter if nothing more than a series of promises that they say they're going to deliver?
Yes, that's true too.
And that when people say that they're beholden to their investors, well, you have a lot of investors when you run a Kickstarter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. The thing about Kickstarter too, though, is that now people kind of use as an advertising tool for a game that's pretty much almost done.
Well, they code their stretch goals. Basically, stretch goals aren't stretch goals anymore. They're just part of the normal game.
Looks like I haven't completely developed my melee strategy yet at this point.
I punch you. You fall down.
Well, it doesn't look like he's forcing me to develop my strategy. Later on, when the enemies get more aggressive, I'll be dashing in and out, like dash in, punch, dash out, and that prevents them from being able to melee you back. Anyway, it was fun. It was fun while it lasted.
And then you went with and then you found out there was an optimized strategy that was better than all.
Oh, I
others,
knew
and
that. I
you
knew
had
that
no
launch
choice,
was.
but
I don't think it's an ingenious move that launches an optimized strategy. I think you could just take one look at that tree and say, "Oh, this is the best part of the tree."
I mean, it's very clear that the game is geared around it. I mean,
Yeah.
everything in the game is meant to be picked up and thrown. And
Right.
the fact that you can, I feel
Look how
the
fast
small
I'm
thing,
killing
the
these
small
guys,
thing
though.
of being able to pull the concrete up out of the ground and throw that, I thought was really smart.
Oh yeah, no, it's great. It's fun. It's fun. It's just it's really good, or it's a little too good sometimes.
Sure. I mean, that's why I didn't spec into it my second time through.
So if they hadn't listened to the people on the forums, this wouldn't have happened, Nick.
Well, I'm willing to bet that they spent more money on getting the launch power to look right. So they wanted to encourage people to use it.
That's actually probably more the driving force here, because this is the corporate game.
But I mean, I'd be hard pressed to name another game that handled that mechanic better. I mean, it's handled undeniably better than the first game to do it with Half-Life.
So we were talking about escort missions on Saturday, and this is kind of like the escort missions done well of telekinetic powers. The biggest problem with telekinetic powers in other games is that you usually have to find an object in the environment to throw it. And then this game is just like, screw that, we're just going to pull a piece of concrete out of the wall if there's nothing around, which was the best thing they could have done.
Man, not being able to grab those rockets.
In BioShock, that had telekinesis, and the objects were so ubiquitous that it was nearly impossible to not find something.
Sure.
Yeah, there was clutter just everywhere. I forgot that was in BioShock. Could you equip telekinesis and a weapon at the same time?
Yeah.
Yeah, you could.
Could you? Are you sure that wasn't added in BioShock 2?
I'm pretty sure you... Oh, wait, you're right. You basically had
Yeah,
your...
because, it puts your weapon away. I remember that because the right way to use the crossbow was you shoot the crossbow and then immediately switch to plasmids and then switch back. And then it gets rid of the, between shot. Yeah.
So they nerfed that strategy when they with BioShock 2.
Well, it kind of made sense with BioShock 2 because you're a huge, strong, lumbering beast. It made sense that you'd be able to single hold something like a shotgun and shoot it because, you're the size of a tank.
So back on subject. If you are a developer, how do you avoid the pitfalls of... So do you think we've adequately described the pitfalls of what social media could...
I think so.
How that could...
Yeah.
So how would you avoid that as a developer? Besides just plugging your ears and not listening.
Actually, one other thing that I wanted to... I don't remember what developer it was, but I remember some developer saying that players are terrible at giving you the correct feedback of what you should change, but they're very good at giving you feedback of that there's a problem somewhere.
That may have been Mark Brown, but yeah, I mean, it seems like it's a good phrase, or it's a good thing to say, or a good statement.
They'll highlight issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's the whole concept of playtesting. That's been around since day one, basically.
This is a general attribute of good communication, or being a good communicator, is when somebody is complaining about something, even if the logical argument that they're making makes absolutely no rational sense whatsoever, the fact that they're reacting the way they do is genuine, and you can't discount that.
Right.
So while the player might not be able to communicate what it is that's making them feel that way, the fact that they feel that way is something that should be analyzed.
Yeah, I mean, it's another data point. anytime you can get more information about how and why certain people play your game a certain way, that's going to benefit you.
Yeah, so going back to the question of what developers should do with their feedback from players, I think that's what they should do, is try to identify what the issues are from the feedback and not use their solutions.
Yeah, I think I pretty much totally agree. With the one exception being if you worked on the original Fallout or Fallout 2, you should definitely just listen to me and make Van Buren. Just do that. That's all you should do. But everyone else, don't listen to fans.
Van Buren kind of reminded me of Neverwinter Nights, like how it was turning out, where you would like be able to rotate the camera and all that slow.
I think it was going to be kind of janky 3D, which probably wouldn't be the best way to go, but still, I would have been interested to see how it turned out.
It's one of those mystery things. You have no idea how it was going to turn out.
No. I mean,
it's the forbidden fruit.
I enjoyed the products that came out of that team around the time that they would have been making Van Buren.
Right.
Like, I really enjoyed Temple of Elemental Eve. I thought that was a great game. And I'm trying to think what other games Troika made. Oh, Arcanum. They made a ton of just really flawed but good RPGs during that period.
Yeah. Well, who knows? Who knows what might have happened if it could have been allowed to do its thing.
I mean, that would have really fundamentally changed the whole line of things because... Oh, I was like, wait, why aren't these guys attacking you? And then I realized you're in the X-ray room.
This is where I'm cutting it, by the way, because I didn't want to spoil what happens at this point.
Oh, man. I wonder what happens.
So yeah, I think that's some good advice on the subject. I had something else that I was going to say on it, but I can't remember what it was now at this point. So, what were you going to say,
I think
Nick?
there's just like anything. There's a line you got to toe between, producing a game that scratches an itch that a gamer wants scratched, without scratching so hard they start bleeding.
Right. Oh, what I was going to say is that when you playtest your own game, you have a way of doing things that you get in the habit of doing. And having somebody play through your game completely blind and not knowing any of the mechanics that you yourself designed is especially important because you're going to feel a certain way about your own game. And by the way, I'm going to spoil the solution to this puzzle here because I didn't cut this part. But so I played a game, and the developer had him and his friends playtest the game, and the main thing they accomplished was bug testing. But their game, when it was released, was really difficult because all the people playing were like Smash Brothers pros, or just good at games in general. And to them, it was fine and perfect, but as soon as it got released, it got panned for being too difficult. And even when I played it, I'm like, yeah, I really love this game, but I think it's going to have a problem with the general audience.
I think it ties in. Unknown V2 brought up, devs know the solutions to the puzzles they created as well, so it's hard for them to play test if it's reasonable for a player to figure out their puzzle.
Right.
And I think that ties directly back to anybody that has ever tried to DM a D&D campaign where you try to come up with some sort of puzzle for a party and they fumble around it like a bunch of brain-damaged toddlers.
Well, the great thing about D&D campaigns is that you come up with a puzzle, and then if somebody comes with a more creative solution than the solution that you came up with, you're like, you got it. And then you just move on.
A clever thing, yeah. But yeah, actually, I have that like practice Metroidvania that I made, which has just like 2 bosses in it. And Everyone that's ever played it has told me that the first boss is too hard, even though I've never actually lost against that boss while trying to fight it seriously. So it's really hard to gauge what the difficulty of your game should be.
Right. You gotta get some noobs in on there. Give that key for free to some people. Like, here's a beta key,
Yeah.
and you can have the full release when it comes out.
But the other thing is, like, if you just tell somebody that the boss is too hard, that they don't really know how to fix it,
Sure.
especially if they're not having any trouble with it.
Well, then you have people who are experienced with criticism that can kind of point out what they think at least is the problem. Whether or not they're actually right, they can at least give you some insight.
Kind of makes me question, does a dev, or should a dev, need to be able to clear their own challenges to create a good challenge? Like, thinking of Mario Maker, you can't post something on Mario Maker without being able to beat it yourself. In actual game development, should a dev, to produce a good quality end result, would that dev need to be able to beat their own challenge?
I would say that they'd have to be able to beat their own challenge easily for it to be at the right difficulty.
Yeah, and I think you're definitely going to want other people to play it as well, though, to gauge it.
Yeah.
I thought this game looked terrible, and then you went to this next area, and it looks awesome.
The walk is so slow.
You just summarized this game in a nutshell. So this game is advertised as a chill platforming experience, and so your character moves at just a slow walk pace,
as if he's dying of hypothermia.
Yeah, and I promise you that it delivers on exactly what it advertises. That it just, once you get into the mood of it, it's kind of relaxing.
Also, why is the enemy's health bar so dark?
I don't know what's going on with that. It could be just the codec messing it up.
Oh, right. I like all the men on fire. They're like, "Wah!"
I just picked a random section of the game, and I don't even know. I'm like, oh, this is a good place for it to start and end.
Oh, are you going to spoil the story?
I don't know if there's much to spoil on this one.
Oh, you go to a castle with a knight inside?
Spoilers. That does look a lot like Dracula's castle in the background.
Yeah, it kind of does.
I love the conversations with the NPCs in this game. This is how fast I read, by the way. Somebody was like, you don't even read the dialogue. I'm like, you don't know what I'm reading.
It reminds me of that, it's like a little paragraph, but all the letters are jumbled except for the first and last one. And it basically says, like, your brain can sort this out because it doesn't actually look at the whole word. It just looks at the first and last letter and then jumps to the conclusion of what the word is.
Right.
And if you actually go back and look at it, it's all, like, jumbled up.
Yeah, and you can do that with sentences to a degree as well.
Sure. Well, that's the core of speed running. Or speed running.
Speed reading. Yeah.
I'm going to speed run this book!
Just flip to the last page, you're done.
It's really bad when I'm actually like picking up footage for a video review and I actually want people to be able to read the dialogue. I actually have to stretch the time of the dialogues, and it doesn't work very well in a game like Ori where there's constantly stuff flying around in the background, because then it looks weird, because like something like this where the image is static while you're in the dialogue, it's pretty easy to stretch it out, but
Right.
Is that why you voice the characters when you're streaming?
No, I voice the characters when I'm streaming because the non-native English speakers said that they prefer that, because I guess it's easier for them to listen, comprehend, than it is to try and read fast enough for the video.
Yeah.
And it also means that all of that money he spent on his accent lessons paid off.
My accent lessons. I'm pretty sure that any accent that I try to make is going to offend somebody.
Is this? I don't have sound on. Is it playing the Snake Eater song?
It should be. This isn't a ladder. It doesn't count.
This is a chill platforming experience, Nick. You just gotta be chill. Speaking of which, one of our topics for tonight, and I put it on as the last topic, but I feel like we kind of led into it. And the topic was, should every game have an easy mode? And this is something that Nick and I have talked about a lot.
I think
Something
every
we've talked about a lot.
I think
Yes.
every game where the core experience is built around the narrative and story and characters should have an easy mode.
So Nick's opinion has changed on this over the years, and so has mine, to be honest.
I don't really like difficulty modes because they just almost never, like they're pretty arbitrary. There's not like any standardized thing for difficulties.
That's actually what I was going to say. Is I sympathize with the reason why people want easy modes, but I don't necessarily think the easy modes are the solution that people actually need. My preferred solution, at least out of what has actually been done, and not what I can't imagine or haven't theorized about, is having accessibility options that you turn on in a menu.
Are there any games that you've played frequently that utilize that?
Yeah, actually, it's become really popular recently. Phoenotopia did it. Blackberrien did it. I think that Control has them, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was leading towards.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. You're just trying to say that Control has that. Yes.
And they actually introduced it after launch.
That's interesting.
Oh, so that's why I didn't know they had it.
That's interesting they did it after launch. Maybe because of feedback.
Yeah, I think that's probably one time when feedback can directly improve a game.
Sure.
Yeah. And I mean, it was things like, I'd have to pull it up, but I remember one for sure was more aggressive auto lock on.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, honestly, because of how easy it is to target things with launch, it almost feels like that would be a balance factor for the guns.
Sure, I mean, to balance the guns back. I mean, some guns you don't actually shoot enemies directly with.
Yeah, like the shotgun and stuff, I think is what you're trying to say.
Well, Surge.
Oh, I actually never got the Surge, because that's a DLC weapon, right?
No.
Oh.
It's the Magnum grenade launcher.
Oh, that's Charge.
Or Charge. I didn't mean Surge.
Yeah.
I said Surge because that's what I just unlocked. But, yeah, I agree.
So that's a more direct way of doing it. But there's been a lot of games that have had less direct ways of setting your difficulty. Like even just like an RPG with a level up system, that's a way of dynamically setting difficulty.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that way, see, in my mind, that's not a good way, because what you're doing is you're trading challenge for time.
Right.
And that's not a good trade in my mind.
Okay, so I've been playing Final Fantasy VI mods, and I have a lot of thoughts about leveling systems at this point. And I think the bigger problem with Final Fantasy VI and leveling, and probably all of these JRPGs and leveling, is that you're still, so it's not just, so like raising your defense is important because occasionally the enemy will have like a super strong attack that will just destroy you if you don't raise your defense. But maybe the issue is the super strong attack and not the fact that your defense wasn't high enough.
So there's this concept called, I think it's called breakpoints in games with RPG mechanics, where there's certain relationships between stats where if your stats reach a certain point, then the entire way that the game plays changes.
Yeah, so I think the best example of this is that if you deal 1 damage to an enemy with 4 hit points, then it will take 4 hits to kill it. When you raise your damage to 2 damage, it will take 2 hits to kill it. And when you raise your damage to 3 damage, it's as if you hadn't raised your damage, because it still takes you 2 hits to kill the monster.
Right.
That's the concept of breakpoints, or the simplified version of it.
Yeah, but there's also like defensive breakpoints where it's like, okay, I get one shot, which means I literally can't beat this thing no matter what. Whereas if you have one health left, then it's possible to heal back.
Right. So Unknown V2 has mentioned one of the counter arguments against leveling systems, and it's interesting that that's the direction that we're taking on this. But and that is, so Nick made the argument that leveling systems are changing time for difficulty, and Unknown V2 says that you have to practice to get good anyway, and so that is like time for difficulty as well. Any response to that?
Do you want me to give your response to that?
What is my response to that?
All right, I'm going to guess. But if you're going to take the time anyway, it would be better to end up with a personal skill, a skill that you as an actual person developed, rather than artificially driving up a stat number on a character's skill.
That is my argument. I think I'd probably add a little bit more nuance to that, but that is the argument in a nutshell. That you get something out of getting good. Part of it also is that how long it takes you to learn is kind of up to you to a certain degree. Like, you can argue that it's going to take a certain amount of time depending on where you're at, no matter what, and that might be true. But as you get better at games, you can transfer those abilities to other games.
So there are transferable skills and non-transferable skills.
Sure.
One of the reasons that I really hate timing challenges in games is that they're largely non-transferable skills, where it's like you just have to know when this boss's hitbox comes out based on their animation.
There might be some truth to that. I don't know, though, because I think that if you find somebody who plays a lot of rhythm games, I'm going to be willing to bet that it takes them less time to master a rhythm song than it would somebody who hasn't put that many hours into rhythm games. But this is, again, back to what we were talking about at the beginning of this. None of us are experts on this subject. None of us have done research and peer-reviewed it and all that stuff. So
we're really good at stating unfounded opinions.
Yes, well, that's what this is all. It's just a disclaimer. These are all just ideas.
That's what the name of the podcast should be. Unfounded opinions.
I don't think it's unfounded. We all have anecdotal experience.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say.
But yeah, I know what you're saying, Caldroth, is that there are certainly things that don't feel as transferable as others, and I think that there is a little bit of that to a degree. And there have been studies done that you cannot react to certain things within a certain amount of time. Like if something happens, if you don't know what's coming, then there's no way you could have possibly reacted to it.
Are we going to start fighting about Meat Boy?
No. We don't have to. But so to a certain degree, you are right that when that thing happens, there's no way you could have seen it coming. But then again, like I said, people who played rhythm games, maybe they intuitively know what to expect. But I could be wrong on that. I think you would have to actually get a test group, and I have no idea how you would even construct something like that. It's like, hey, how about I pay you $500 to play 40 hours of rhythm games this week, and then we'll put you on a new rhythm game and see how well you do compared to somebody else that we just put on there blind. Would be how I would think about maybe possibly constructing that experiment.
I think for rhythm games, like half of that game is executing, and you can get better at executing rhythm game, like in a given rhythm game. But like,
okay, so here's how the experiment should go. You play 40 hours of Rhythm Heaven Fever, get as far as you can, and then play Sekiro, and then give somebody who has never played Sekiro before the controller and see who does better. Like, find two players like that.
It would have to be those two players have no experience with Souls-like games.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's
what we should start a new science, and it's like gaming economics.
Yeah, transferable skills in gaming. What are they?
like using science to evaluate games.
Anyway, I know exactly what you're talking about, Caldroth. Just to sympathize with you, I was playing Indivisible last night, and the final boss is 2 minutes of dodging attacks using the parry button.
Oh man, you and Perry.
Oh my gosh. And the game doesn't require you to do that at all up until that point. So it feels so out of left field. And it was just a matter of me playing it over and over again. And that goes back to the gaming variety that we talked about on a previous stream, where sometimes games have their little game variety and it's like, oh, I guess I'm playing this other game now, when I was kind of enjoying the original game that I was playing, you know. That's kind of what that felt like.
Lots of games love having gaming variety on the final boss, which is probably the worst place to put it.
Yeah, that makes not a whole lot of sense.
No, it was. I mean, in all technicality, the game does have a parry system, but the game isn't hard enough. Wasn't hard enough for it to be something that I'd have even paid attention to up until that point. Especially since the game gives you the option to use different strategies, because you have 50 different characters, and it's not that many. It's like 12 or 14 different characters that you can choose from, and change your strategies accordingly. But the final boss is just you, the main character, spoiler alert, and the final boss, and you just have to dodge for 2 minutes. And I'm like, the game didn't make me do anything similar to this at all up to this point. It did not lead up to it at all. And that's...
Well, party mechanic, too.
What's that?
So would you say... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I dumped the party mechanic, yes.
Would you say that's the closest the game has gotten to the original Valkyrie profile?
No, not even close.
Really? What would you say is the closest combat-wise to combat?
Okay. Out of all the Valkyrie profile likes that I have played, it is the closest because it is the only other one I played. However, I don't feel like it. I don't feel like it's like Valkyrie profile because of those mechanics. And Valkyrie profile didn't make you do as much boring platforming as Indivisible makes you do.
I'm shocked that there aren't more Valkyrie profile likes.
Exist Archive is the other one. It's actually made by the same team, I think.
Was that before?
I think it came out before Indivisible. It's on the PS4.
No.
I don't know.
remember Valkyrie profile having a bunch of platforming, like mostly puzzle platforming, where you have to
Use your little crystals.
Yeah.
No, Valkyrie Profile rightly kept the game's focus on that combat system, whereas Indivisible kind of had an identity crisis.
That game had so many fun mechanics, like the whole concept of, beefing up a character and then sending them off to fight in the war, so you couldn't just pick a character, dump everything into them, and use them till the end of the game.
Valkyrie Profile made grinding fun.
I mean, there are plenty of games that make grinding fun.
Sure.
I mean, that was the whole bread and butter of Dynasty Warriors.
That's true.
Or I've recently gotten back into Warframe, and that is undeniably a grind game.
Could you imagine Dynasty Warriors with the Einherjar mechanic where you have to send them off?
Oh, that would be amazing.
They should do
so
that.
Good.
We've just
You
come
kind of have to switch characters when you switch campaigns.
True.
That's true. But what if you sent them off?
You even get to, in the later Dynasty Warriors, well, later, I haven't played a Dynasty Warriors game in a super long time, but the last one I played, they let you pick 3 characters, and you could switch between them in the battle. So there was even the mechanic of building a party.
I think the last one I played was like 6 or 7.
Do you know what I want, Nick? I want Valkyrie Profile Warriors.
Honestly, that sounds amazing.
Steal our ideas. Square, come on. Do you know what, Square? Just bring back Valkyrie Profile. I don't care how you do it.
I mean, do you really think they're even equipped to do it anymore?
So that was Tri-Ace, I'm pretty sure. And
oh, you're right. That was Tri-Ace.
Yeah.
Tri-Ace has been relegated to helping other companies make games. It's really disappointing to me.
They need to
were
help.
Tied to Enix, weren't they?
Yeah.
They need to help.
Originally, Enix. They did Star Ocean, Valkyrie Profile. Let's see, what were their other major series? I don't know that they had other series. They did Resonance of Fate.
Oh, they did Resonance. Wait, was that the gun game where you're on the weird tower?
Yeah.
Dude, that game was so... Well, I was about to say so good. That was an okay game that was really unique.
Yeah. That was basically what Tri-Ace was like you were talking about that other company where they made all these really cool, like, but not quite polished RPGs.
Yeah. Similar.
Yeah.
We need more of that. I feel like that's what the dev environment today is kind of lacking, is that mid-level stuff.
It's kind of the opposite of what you said about Control.
Yeah, absolutely. The less polish, more, I don't want to say heart, because Control I think has heart, but I mean the Ashtray Maze alone has heart.
No spoilers.
I feel like some games are just, they work because they're not polished. Like, the example I always use for this is Final Fantasy Tactics versus Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced. Like, Final Fantasy Tactics is inherently an incredibly broken game, like completely unbalanced, and that was what I loved about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a great comparison. Because I have played through Final Fantasy Tactics probably 5 times, something like that. I've played through the GBA games once each. That's it.
Yeah.
I couldn't even get through them once. But that was a time in my life where I wasn't really playing RPGs in general.
I just remember my first reaction was the first fight is a snowball fight.
They also made all that like, Final Fantasy Tactics had one of the most mature storylines in like games period.
It still is, yeah.
Yeah, and then like Final Fantasy Tactics is like, okay, they're all children now.
Yeah.
Having children concerns.
And I'll fully admit that I bought Final Fantasy Tactics when I was, I don't know, however old I was, because I was like, oh man, Cloud's in the game. And then Cloud was terrible.
Oh my gosh, Cloud is so bad.
Wasn't there like one move that he had that was decent?
Like the biggest thing holding him back was the fact that he had to equip his Buster Sword to use any of his special attacks.
Yeah.
And they also had charge times, and at that point in the game you could, like, all the good characters didn't need to charge.
Yeah.
Well, the best part about getting Cloud was every character you got before you get Cloud.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I should go back and play some of the like special modded versions that have been released over the years. The like, I don't know if I'd play the like ultra hard one, but there are plenty that add like more challenge to the game if you've experienced it more than a couple of times.
So I've got a couple of those mods, and I started one called Monster Tactics, and it basically like gives monsters classes and makes them more complex. And in the first battle, the part where the guy comes in from outside, and you're like at the cathedral with the princess or whatever, and like a monster comes in from outside. He's like, "Hey!" Like, this is just goofy. And also, it's like I was like looking at the different abilities. I'm like, this seems a little bit like the behemoth had like 14 different powers. And I'm like,
jeez.
I'm like, they may have overdone this a little bit. And also, like, there's no theme here. It's just now monsters have a ton of different powers. Or the chocobos had like 3 different colors of meteors and different healing spells. And I'm like,
chocobos were already annoying to fight.
But yeah, there's a couple of mods out there that look really interesting.
Yeah, just to freshen things up. I mean, I can play that game with my eyes closed, basically. I still need to play Fell Seal.
I hear it's good.
Yeah, I've heard pretty much nothing but good things.
Fell Seal has a lot of different difficulty options.
It does, yeah. And the classes look legitimately unique and fun. Which I think the classes are the bread and butter of that kind of game.
Speaking of difficulty modes, so Caldrath said earlier, everybody complains about there not being easy modes. How come nobody ever complains about there not being hard modes?
I mean, can you give an example of a game that you feel would benefit from a hard mode?
Blasphemous.
I mean, okay, what form would that hard mode take in Blasphemous?
Blasphemous has a hard mode now.
Well, it's a new game plus. It could have used the hard mode from the very beginning. I don't know, just like make it so that the bosses have some more health, I think.
Oh, really? Just make them spongier?
Yeah, like the main thing that happened with me is that like I beat almost every single boss on the first try, um, but like I would just barely beat them, so I didn't feel like I would like really learning the fight or anything like that. So like I didn't feel like I had mastered the fights.
Oh, all right. You felt like you lucked through them.
Right.
So you want the opposite of an accessibility menu where you can turn up enemy HP values.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't see why not. Like as long as you have accessibility, why not? So Unknown V2 brought up the Lego games where you can't die as a game that could use a hard mode, and I can kind of agree with that. Although I don't know, those games are kind of doofy.
I have never played any of those Lego games.
So just so everybody knows, Unknown V2 does trophy hunting is one of the things, and so I could totally see if you're in there for the trophies, wanting to make the game more interesting.
Oh yeah. I'm
Well,
sure some of those Lego trophies are just absolute torture.
Oh, I'm
well,
sure.
if you're at the point that you're trophy hunting, you're probably like playing through the game a second time, so you're probably not dying.
Maybe so. I don't know. He'd have to give some insight on that. So I
I trying to think
chose.
if there's any games that I play that I would want a hard mode for that don't have one.
So this boss that's on the screen right now is the hardest boss in the game, and they really hint that you should try and explore somewhere else before fighting this boss.
And so of course you
Of
didn't.
course, I didn't. And so you'll see me fail a lot here. But you can unlock a dash power that would have made this boss so much easier if I had it. But I don't, so here we are, me figuring out how to beat this boss without it.
Oh yeah, I'm sure games where you can get all of the trophies within like an hour or something like that are gold for trophy hunters.
I guess that's true. When your end goal is the trophy, then it would make sense that the faster you get them, the better.
The one thing that I did think of after I mentioned why aren't there, like, why does nobody ask for a hard mode is it's kind of like the opposite, like an equal and opposite thing as asking for an easy mode.
Yeah.
Like, it's just like recontextualizing it. Um, so the normal just automatically becomes the easy mode at that point. And I guess it kind of comes down to like the idea of standardizing what difficulty a given mode is.
That is the biggest problem with it, is that nobody has the same opinion on that. It's like that scene from that famous scene where the guy's bragging about his stereo system or whatever, and he's like, it turns up to 11, or the volume goes up to 11, it's amazing. And the guy's like, so why didn't they just make the 11 volume be the 10 volume, and just make it go up to 10? And he like pauses, and he's like, but it goes up to 11.
Well, that's like the We Rate Dogs Twitter, where they rate dogs 1 to 10, and then they made their first 11 out of 10 and 12 out of 10 and 13 out of 10.
Just keep doing it.
And now I think they've got a 14 out of 10, and on their FAQ, they're like, is there going to be a 15 out of 10? And their response is, no, it's got to stop somewhere.
That's amazing. But yeah, that's exactly what easy, medium, and hard is you have that problem. Let's see. So Unknown V2 is saying that hard mode would be good for speedrunners as a new category, and I agree with that. They already have that, I think, for the games that actually do have difficulties.
And also in a lot of games, I think there are more mechanics in games to make the game more challenging than there are to make the game easier.
You think so?
Yeah, you can always intentionally gimp yourself.
So, okay, I said on a previous stream that I am not against the idea of easy modes, and that I think that it's fine that they make their game more accessible if that is the purpose of what they're trying to do. But I did want to talk a little bit about the counter argument for not having easy modes. and that is the intentionality of the game's design, like what the experience is meant to be. And just thinking about that for a little bit, I made a joke when a thread about this recently came up on the subreddit. Was what if they made 5 different versions of every movie to fulfill the tastes of everybody that or everybody that could possibly enjoy that movie under different circumstances, like James Bond, the chick flick version. It has more romance or more. I guess I don't know. I've never actually watched James Bond, so this is a terrible example. Somebody else throw out an example here.
They make they make a Justice League movie, and they have like Joss Whedon make one, and he fills it with a bunch of like one-liners and quips, and people don't like that because they're tired of one-liners and quips, and so they hire somebody else that's like really edgelordy. We'll say like Zack Snyder or something, and he makes a version where it's like really dark and gritty, and nobody jokes about anything.
Actually, you're getting the story backwards. What happened was that Zack Snyder had some family problems, and he was originally put in charge of the movie, and then they put Joss Whedon in charge of the movie while he was out with the family problems. And so there was a huge argument that the original vision of the movie was lost, and that's why the hashtag release the Snyder cut was on Twitter all over the place.
I feel like they should just expand that, and then like next they should do a different cut from like a different director.
Yeah. Do the Nick cut.
Release the Wes Anderson Justice League cut, and like he'll do reshoots and make sure that Bill Murray's in the movie now.
But could you imagine if we treated movies the same way we treat video games? Like, oh, that part of the movie was terrible. Disney should redo the entire movie and then cut this scene or whatever. Like re-edit it.
You mean like changing
I know
Sonic?
people do that. I know people do that, but they don't patch movies.
They patched Sonic.
They did patch Sonic. Okay. You know what? That is becoming a thing now, and I think that's funny. Speaking of social media affecting video games, it's affecting movies too.
I mean, yeah, affects all media, I guess.
And in a way, it is hand in hand with this whole it needs an easy mode movement. And again, I don't disagree with the concept, but there is a certain level of you're not really playing the same game when you do that. And I think that is a valid argument.
Well, I think people are already not playing the same game. Like,
that's true.
If you or I, who's played a bunch of Dark Souls, like went into Dark Souls 3, and like for me, I felt like Dark Souls 3 was too easy because I'd already played too much Dark Souls. So I was not getting the intended experience. And even though I was playing the exact same game as somebody who was playing their first Dark Souls.
And I played further into Dark Souls 3 than I played into any of the previous Dark Souls games, and was enjoying it more until my file corrupted. But I think it's because of the very same reason that you were getting a diminished experience from the game.
Yeah. And the other thing is that Dark Souls actually has a lot of stuff in it to mitigate difficulty already. So like the co-op modes, just leveling up
with a build that you use.
Yeah, like there's overpowered weapons that you can like find, and you can just like look up a guide to find an overpowered weapon.
Yeah, you kind of get used to that after playing a few Souls games, I think.
Yeah.
So Unknown V2 brings up the narrative argument that the added challenge makes the final cutscene feel like more of a reward, and I can agree with that. Or if the final cutscene is bad, then it makes it a huge letdown when you get there.
I mean, the immediate response to that is, it doesn't matter how good that final cutscene feels once you've beaten the boss, if you turned off the game and never went back to it because you couldn't beat that boss.
Right. Well, that's the other argument that people make for easy modes, is that I paid for this game and so I deserve to see the whole thing. And I find that also an interesting argument because, again, the gameplay is part of the experience, so you're not really seeing the whole thing just because you went and saw the cutscene. But like Nick was saying, if the game is very story focused in the first place, where the gameplay is almost secondary, then difficulty modes make a heck of a lot more sense.
I view difficulty modes in a narrative game like I view closed captions on a movie. They're there to help the people that, in quotation marks, need them. And I feel like the argument of, well, that wasn't made for those people is kind of like, okay, well, I'm not going to put subtitles on my movie because my movie is meant to be enjoyed with the voices of my actors. That's what my intended experience was. And if you can't experience that way, sucks to be you. Like, that would never be a viable argument.
Now, I'd like to say that I think that we're using easy modes and accessibility options interchangeably at this point, just for anybody who's tuning in now or wasn't listening up until this point. And
Sure,
I completely agree with that. And that's why I don't really have a problem with accessibility options, especially like, you know, if somebody with cerebral palsy wants to play Dark Souls, they should be able to. And I think there should be.
And I don't even think that you necessarily need to have a physical or mental
Sure.
disability for that to be effective. Maybe you just bad at games. Like, there's people that have, you know, crummy reaction time.
Yeah. I watch all my Netflix and movies with subtitles on just because I have children and it helps me focus on what people are saying. So my children are my disability when it comes to movies.
That's it. So Unknown V2 says that he thinks that most players nowadays just choose the easiest difficulty by default and don't actually try, or they just try to rush to get to the next game. I mean, maybe it's just because I'm biased towards what I do. I mean, I'm not good at games, but I still play most games on hard mode because I feel like I get the most out of them when I do that.
Yeah. Oh, minor spoilers for this game, although this is in the game's trailers and stuff. There's not really much I can do to avoid
That
the
was an
death
incredible death animation thing. That was amazing.
This game's great. So, by the way, I gave this game a 5 out of 5. So, I thought I'd end on one of my favorites that I played in the last couple of months.
I'm usually not a big fan of NES style, but that was amazing.
As far as trying to rush to the next game, that's a whole other subject, I think. The saturation of games in the market and the inability to experience everything you want to experience.
That's actually, I feel like, a topic that's gaining momentum. I'm hearing more and more people talk about it, that just the glut of media, you can't consume it all.
No, you can't. I was actually looking at my reviews, trying to figure out what games I would pull footage from. I'm like, I played all these games in the last 2 months. I'm like, actually, technically, I only played 8. I'm like, that's really not that many when you really think about it.
I think that's okay. I mean, imagine somebody that was like, oh man, there's too many books published. I can't read them all. Like, no one would expect to read them all.
Yeah, that's true.
Why can't you shorten all the words so I can read your book faster?
Well, see, here's the thing about books is that you can skim read and get through it pretty fast, especially with games having mechanics that are designed to pad the game. You can't. There's a lot of things you just can't do in a video game that you could do reading. So, you know what? If somebody wants to put their game on easy mode, I guess. But again, like I said, I feel like the gameplay is a integral part of that experience.
Yeah, the funny thing is, like, players will complain if a game is too short, but according to Unknown, they'll put it on easy mode to make it shorter.
Right.
Sure.
The thing is, though, like, this is something that companies would have data for. Like, what percentage of players choose what difficulty. Or I guess you could actually look at achievements and, like, see what percentage of players have the, like,
That's
normal
true.
mode and hard mode achievements.
I'd be interested to see a breakdown of difficulty and what percentage of those players actually completed the game. If they're playing it on easy as opposed to hard, which group would be more likely to have a higher completion percentage?
The best part about this is, thanks to achievements, we probably don't even need to do an experiment. We just need to get the data.
So the problem, though, is that you'll probably, like, there generally isn't an achievement for started a game on easy mode. There's beat the game on easy mode.
That's
so
true.
you wouldn't be able to like compare completion rates between like players getting different difficulties done.
And there's also a lot of games where if you beat the game on hard, they also give you on medium and easy in addition to that. So you would no way of knowing if they did it all in one run or if they did it in multiple runs.
Yeah.
What game is this?
This is Astalon Tears of the Earth, and I was about to say on that last part, you got to see exactly how I think when I play these Metroidvania games, where I just jumped into the spike pit to see if I could get across without figuring out how to not take damage.
That's what I've learned playing games with you.
Doesn't the skeleton above it like actually suggest that you jump into the spikes to get across?
Does it? I don't know. There's one part where it does.
He pulls a Wheatley from Portal 2.
Yeah. Let's see. There are achievements for just start the game on hard or beat level 1 on hard. And I'm noticing that your text is really not showing up on this yellow, and I'm sorry about that. I don't know where else to put it. Right there, I guess. Here, we'll put you... No, that's not much better. Oh well, sorry.
It's gonna change.
The
right
text,
in the middle.
The text is...
Right in the middle.
The text is going to be terrible for a little bit. Sorry, guys.
You should just move it around for the rest of the stream.
Oh, gosh.
We'll
put it right here for now. So people can see what Unknown B2 is saying. Anyway, this game was great. This is probably my game of the year so far.
I like the Warhammer 40k platforms.
It's possible that I'll play another game, like maybe Metroid Dread. I doubt it, but... we still haven't... We keep talking about Metroid Dread, but we still haven't done it. And I was like, we could talk about that tonight, and I'm like, we should probably wait till Master's here and talk about Metroid Dread.
I don't have much to say about Metroid Dread.
Sure you do. You got plenty to say about it, because we played through the entire Metroid trilogy this year.
I guess that's true. And we are going to play... I don't know, is that a spoiler?
No, that's not a spoiler. We'll probably play Metroid Fusion very soon here, as soon as we're done with Hollow Knight.
Yeah.
Hopefully that happens before October.
Depends on how quickly you can get through some of those DLC challenges.
I might play Metroid Dread on stream. Probably after I review it, because as I said, I like to play games that have atmosphere focuses by myself.
I'll be interested to see how much they play into the horror kind of elements of the game, because it definitely feels like they're trying to instill a sense of like foreboding in the game, and I don't know if that was just the trailer or if that's actually going to play into the game itself.
So I still haven't watched the trailer because I'm trying not to spoil myself, but Metroid has always been about horror, like from the beginning, and Metroid Fusion especially.
Well, it felt more overt. Like, I did not honestly think that Frankenstein was going to show up.
And then when they started playing the Monster Mash song and she took off her suit and started dancing around.
And then Jason Voorhees showed up and... Actually, a horror... I was about to say a Metroidvania based on like campy horror cliches would be fun, but that's literally what Castlevania is.
That is literally what Castlevania is. I will not survive this. Let's find out. I'm actually really tense right now. Oh, no, wait, I made it.
That's a Mega Man nonsense right there.
I'm showing off all the ladder glitches in this video.
Yeah, so I feel like that's like where all the glitches in the game were on the ladders.
Is the whole game non-panning screens?
Yep. It's actually one
I
of
like
the...
that. That feels... I mean, I said Mega Man, but I feel like that's a really good way to create very tight, kind of curated play areas.
No, that's exactly one of the things that I praise in my review. Oh, I skipped the insights, by the way, because I didn't want to spoil them.
Why did you die as the woman and show up as this guy?
That's part of the plot. He's the one who made the pact with the devil, essentially.
Oh.
And so when the party dies, it gets reset because of the pact that he's made. Again, this is information you get in the first 10 minutes of the game. It's like on the store page, but you know, could be spoiler. It's fun to kind of go into it not knowing that, but you know, I don't think it's a spoiler or anything.
I bet if that guy in that room made a noise, it'd be like, oh.
And that mechanic is the reason why people, for some reason, call this a roguelike.
This game's a roguelike.
Okay.
Because when you die, you get to buy things. Therefore, it's a roguelike. Oh, gosh.
I'm honestly surprised there's not more Metroidvania roguelites.
Oh, there needs to be. I like them. I know
mean,
Call of Duty doesn't.
They're two hot genres.
Well, a lot of people don't like the proc gen, like when Chasm and A Robot Named Fight did it. Like people complained.
I thought it was
Especially
great in
in
both those games, but yeah, I know. Well, so here's the thing: is that people didn't like Chasm when it came out, and then they blamed proc gen for it. I don't believe that that's the reason why people didn't like Chasm.
Yeah, all of the things that people complained about in Chasm, like, may have been due to like concessions made for the proc gen, but they never complained about anything that was actually procedurally generated.
Right. Yes, exactly. And I don't know. I think that the problem with Chasm is that people, if you go into it expecting Castlevania, you're going to be disappointed just because Castlevania has so much bizarreness and variety to it.
Yeah, like there is something special about Castlevania.
Yeah. I mean, there must be because it's so dumb. I like Castlevania. We go back and
Or
forth on
maybe
that a lot.
Resident Evil is kind of the same way.
Resident Evil is the same way. It's the same way. However, I can identify exactly what I like about Resident Evil, and it is because it's dumb.
Well, classic Resident Evil. I'd argue they've lost what made the original games charming in these remakes they've made.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel about them, to be honest.
It's another thing where they polished the game, and then the thing that was appealing about it was that it wasn't polished.
It has a little bit of that Resident Evil camp to it still. Like, I played the Resident Evil 2 remake, but it does feel... And the funniest thing is that Resident Evil 2 is probably the most serious of the original trilogy.
Well, supposedly, what's the one that just came out? 6? Is that 7?
8? Yeah.
Gosh, there's so many. Supposedly 8 is very similar to 4.
Oh, really? Like camp-wise?
Like it's... Well, I mean, look at the main...
That's true.
Antagonist that everybody was obsessed with.
And that makes me more interested in it. However, I haven't heard, like... Most people who played it are just like, yeah, it was fine. Like...
I heard pretty darn good things. I know Adam Sessler loved it.
I want to hear what Gaming Brit says about it. He's the one that
I'm almost positive he'll like it.
Yeah, we'll see.
Of course, he liked 5, and you hated 5.
No, 6.
Oh, 6.
He actually didn't like 5. He liked 6 because he liked the camp in 6. I just
Definitely
can't.
Goes off the charts.
I can't stand the gameplay in 6. It's just there is way too much. Like they don't let you actually play the game. They do too much of the quick time events and you're sliding down a sewage pipe and surfing, trying to dodge barrels or whatever. I'm like, the gameplay is great. The core gameplay is fine. It just they don't do it.
I don't know. I don't really have a problem with quick time events. My main problem with them is when they pop up during gameplay cinematics when you're not expecting them to pop up. But short of that, I don't mind them. And that's probably partially because of like when I grew up and playing Dreamcast games and loving things like Shenmue, where that mechanic originally kind of developed. And as a result, I'm a little more tolerant of it.
Well, yeah, you were playing games where QuickTime events were the point of the game, so you like got used to it there. And Resident Evil, it kind of feels like it was just like shunted in.
Yeah, I mean, they can't sit there for 2 minutes and watch story, so...
I think part of my problem with Resident Evil 6 is that I wanted more Resident Evil 4 out of it.
I think, yeah, I mean, from 5 and 6, people just wanted more 4, and they tried to deliver, but didn't.
Yeah. Didn't do a good job delivering it.
That's supposedly what 8 kind of ties back to, so...
Well, and maybe it is the game that I've been looking for, but We shall see. I will play it eventually. I still haven't played 7. One of the reasons why I didn't play 7 is I'm like, this game was made for VR. I should play it VR. And then it's still exclusive to PlayStation as far as the VR is concerned.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
At this point, it's never going to stop being that way.
That's really disappointing if that's the case.
I mean,
Anyway.
So what's the percent chance that the vampire lady has a mod that turns her into Thomas the Tank Engine?
I actually think
Well, it already happened.
I was about to say I'm pretty sure.
Is that 100%? There was a 100% chance that mod exists.
I think there is a 100% chance that mod exists. In fact, I'm going to Google it and put it on the screen. Let's see here.
I'm going to say if that or maybe Shrek. One of the two. If not both.
Yeah. Thomas the Tank Engine with Shrek's face.
Perfect. That's peak internet.
All right, let me see here. Let me get the window capture here. I don't want to display capture. Well, maybe I do. Let's see
Is that
here.
because you've actually found this?
Here. Let me just do a display capture here real quick.
Imagine how terrifying it would be. You'd be like exploring the castle in a dark corner, and then all of a sudden in the distance you hear
There you go. There you go,
a
Nick.
train whistle. Oh, that is horrifying.
Oh,
that is
apparently
so
they have
much
a-
worse than I was expecting.
They have a Barney mod as well.
That is
Thomas
so... I hate that.
Oh, I guess it has both. It has Lady Grimskew, the tank engine, and it has Thomas, the Lady Grimskew.
I did not like that.
Thanks, I hate it.
Thanks, I hate it. Yeah, it's that. What is it? Perfect execution, terrible product.
Oh yeah, awful taste but great execution. That's what the subreddit is, which is a funny but horrifying subreddit sometimes. Let's see. Oh, so we have 10 minutes left, and our last topic was game compulsions.
Seems like you have a compulsion to jump on spikes to get to the area.
Yes, I do, as it turns out.
There's no way out of here.
So fun nuance story from Q. We were playing Remnant, I don't know, a couple of months ago now, and all of a sudden it just pops up. Then he died, and he's like, "Hey guys, you can die in the holes." That basically perfectly sums up.
I like the way my brother put it, though. He's like, "Did you just for science the hole?"
Yeah.
I'm like, I have absolutely for science the hole just now. And by the way, it kills you.
And now you know.
Well, and then
You
the other
wouldn't
one
have
is
known.
shooting NPCs. Those are the two things he always has to try.
Well, it was a Souls-like game. I had to find out whether or not the NPCs could be harmed. But yes, it is funny that the first thing I did when I got to town was try and murder everybody.
That's it. Would you say that is a gaming compulsion?
I think it's a thing that I've developed over time. I wouldn't necessarily call it a compulsion. I've just discovered that the fastest way to getting good at a game is by not caring about what happens to your character.
Yeah.
Like, you don't know what happens to your character until it happens to you, so why not just speed up the process?
I like the owl chickens in this game.
Yeah, they're like the most pointless enemy in the game. They don't really do much.
But I think that's part of why I don't like long roguelikes, is like, you get penalized for experimenting by having to start the game all over again.
Yeah.
That's definitely the down. Like, the roguelite I have played more than any other is Enter the Gungeon. And there's a lot of variance in the way the game can play out near the end of the game. And experimenting with that content and then dying is frustrating because then you have to fight your way back to it, which is obviously baked into the mechanic of the game. And I sunk 160 hours into that game, so obviously it's still a compelling mechanic, but it's definitely one that can be frustrating.
So obviously, as I learn about how the game's mechanics work, I'll stop doing things. Like, I didn't keep jumping into the hole after I'd figured out what happens when it does.
You had the information.
It was calling to you.
So an actual game compulsion that I would say that I have is my inability to not optimize. And to be honest, I actually did pretty good with control for a very good long while there because I knew from the beginning. But here's the thing, though, is that so me playing the melee build was kind of my for science of that particular mechanic because I'm like, there's no way this is good. So I had to find out whether or not it is. And it is fun. It's a fun build. It just doesn't work on bosses. The content. Basically, the only thing that works on bosses is launch. Maybe C's because they all have ads, but
well, yeah, any game that heals you by killing enemies,
right? But like speaking of Remnant, like there's certain things that in Remnant that I just could not do because it was just like if I don't do this, then I'm going to miss out in the long run. Which was equipping the the experience bonus talents.
Yeah, and specking into it and all of that.
Right. Or the ring that I could never take off because it gave me a plus 30% experience boost. That type of thing.
Thinking about Compulsions, the one that jumps out in my mind, and for some reason, the game that it sticks out the most in my mind is Chrono Trigger. And maybe just mentioning that, you'll know what I'm even going to say, but...
Mega Elixirs?
No. The save. The save mechanic. You could hit the save button and it immediately went back to the previous screen, and then it added up how many saves you'd actually done. And so what I would do is go save, and like do it all in a row real fast. And I don't know why I did that, and I did that for a lot of different games where I would save more than once, one right after the other.
Yeah, I would play Sierra Adventure games, and after I loaded my game, I would save my game. I don't even know why.
Well, it's the reloading your gun even though you haven't emptied your magazine of games.
Right. Or playing Control and reloading the gun that you don't actually reload because the game just reloads automatically in that game. So I was constantly switching weapons until I just broke myself of that habit.
I tend to like games where reloading is handled just automatically.
Yeah, I thought that was a great dynamic in Control. It worked well with the launch power.
Yeah, a lot of the new weapons in Warframe automatically reload.
Yeah, I'm excited about getting back into Warframe. I've been away from it for, almost 5 years now. So it's changed a ton. It's basically a different game.
Gotta get your Railjack build.
So on the subject of games like Warframe, I'm not saying Warframe specifically, but like free-to-play games, the moment a game starts to feel like it's trying to manipulate me, sorry.
Oh man, dude.
Yeah, I got distracted by the spammer.
I want to be famous.
Anyway, the whenever I'm playing a free-to-play game, the moment I feel like the game is trying to manipulate me, I just quit. Like, anytime it's like
the enjoyment for you.
Yeah, it does. As soon as the illusion is broken that I'm in control.
I mean, the thing about Warframe is you can get, I don't know, maybe it's changed, but before you could get literally everything in the game with nothing invested besides time.
I know that it was a bad time to bring up that example. I wasn't necessarily pinning that on Warframe, but it's kind of an anti-compulsion of mine that I just...
Sure. I mean, it makes sense. I mean, Warframe, you can buy basically everything, but if you go to any forum, it's like, do not buy things, because getting things is the game.
Yeah, if you buy everything, then it's like, well, I guess I'm done with this game now.
Yeah. It'd be like if you got to, got to the Bowser fight at the end of the first Mario world, and it was like, do you want to pay 99 cents to instantly kill him? Oh, yeah, I do.
The I win button, AVGN, yeah. Yeah, Diablo 3 kind of felt that way after a while. People have been, so speaking of forums ruining games, people have been complaining that loot was too hard to get in Diablo 3, and so with the new seasons, they just basically give you a free epic piece of, or set of loot, like the whole thing. And at that point, it just kind of felt like, well, now I'm just killing monsters. Like, it feels like those desktop simulators that you just hammer your desktop. You remember those back in the day? I don't know if anybody has stuff like that, but
yeah, the whole point of Diablo is hitting the loot pinata.
right.
If I don't need to hit the pinata to get the loot anymore, then I mean, I'm not going to hit a pinata with nothing in it.
Right. And there were other builds that you could do, but every once in a while, the build that they would give you for that season was exactly what you've been trying to try for a long time. And to be honest, one of the things that compelled me to play that game was to try out the builds that I wanted to try out. So in a way, it was kind of good that they showed me that it was a complete waste of my time.
They actually saved you time.
Yeah, I guess. Maybe this is why I have my anti-compulsion for free-to-play games, is because of all the hours I put into Diablo 3.
Which is sadly not even a free-to-play game.
Yeah.
No. It was like the
So are there
opposite of
any free-to-play games that you have played and enjoyed to completion? Or as close to completion as
I was about to say, how do you define completion?
Game?
I like League of Legends. Everybody's going to crucify me now. I enjoyed that when I was playing it. I thought that they did free play pretty well.
Did you really complete League of Legends?
No, that's what I was saying, is there's no completion there.
And also keep in mind, it's probably, like, how long ago were you playing League
Yeah, this was like 5 years ago, so I'm sure the game's not even the same as it was back then, but I enjoyed playing it. I like playing with a team of friends and getting it right. I understand why everybody hates it, because the community is super toxic and it's really hard to play when you have an idiot on your team. But
well, your dream game is kind of what, WoW dungeon raid combat, but
my dream multiplayer game
raid?
is yeah. I would love to take the dungeon content out of the MMORPG with the Holy Trinity, but remove all of the MMO-isms that just waste your time. And I'm kind of curious how well that game would work.
Yeah, an MMO that doesn't waste your time.
Yeah.
Could such a thing exist?
Right.
Not for long.
Yeah.
Although, I don't know, would Minecraft be an MMO that doesn't waste your time?
So actually, like, a lot of the, like, gacha games have the, like, energy mechanic, and that kind of is there to make it so that you can't just grind through the whole game, and you have to pace yourself.
Or pay cash. They get money either way.
Yeah.
Right.
So theoretically, you could make an MMO that doesn't waste your time by having a, like, daily limit on the amount of things that you can do.
That could be just as frustrating to me, but
Yeah, like,
And it would almost, if you're going to limit how much of something someone can do, it would definitely need to be free to play. Like, nobody is going to feel good about paying money for something and then having an arbitrary limit on the amount of content you can ingest.
what was that? Something Gates. That was like the Metroidvania that had the like dailies.
Breaking Gates, yeah.
Breaking Gates, yeah.
Yeah, technically I should be reviewing that one. But
I mean, I like games that have like daily challenge type things. Like Noita is a good example, where they give you fun little builds and put you in a random location and you try to survive as long as you can.
it works better in a roguelite because it's more like, this is something different you could try today. Instead of you need to play this in order to level up your character optimally.
That's true.
Didn't Chasm have like daily
Yeah,
things?
it does actually. And they're kind of fun. I kind of like that. I like that. I think those are fun. I don't like daily challenges where it's just like, if you don't do this at this time every single day, then you're going to miss out.
Well, yeah, that's gotcha stuff. That's
yeah.
game stuff.
FOMO. Oh man, my resin's full.
Or like the log in 30 days in a row.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that nonsense.
Well, that ties back into, what's the really popular gacha game right now?
Genshin Impact.
Oh yeah, Genshin Impact.
That's actually what I was referring to.
Yeah, that's the big one right now. Yeah, I never touched that because I know their tricks.
I mean, I have basically time for one of those games at any one time, and usually not even that. Why did that ladder just go into the wall?
It was a secret. This is how secrets happened back in the old days. Don't you remember?
Oh, okay.
There's one point in this game where there's a ladder, like, in the floor, and, like, it's actually pretty early in the game. Like,
Oh yeah.
there's no way that you can see the ladder.
And
Actually,
it's
there's
not.
a few places, yeah, that have ladders in the floor.
There's no way you can see it until you come out the opposite end. So you had the shortcut all along. You just didn't know about it.
Yeah.
The shortcut was inside you all along.
I think that's cool, to be honest, because then if you ever decide to replay the game, now you have it.
Then you know it's there. You know what game handled secrets and discovering secrets through exploration really, really well? Celeste. I mean, I guess technically that's not a Metroidvania, but
Oh, we got to the fourth game because we went over.
we're over time. Is this the weird media game?
This is Intrepid Izzy.
Okay, yeah.
No, this isn't the Social Network, is that what that's one called? Fantasy Network is what that one's called.
Fantasy. That was a weird one.
Yeah, no, this is the game that has the costumes that, for whatever reason, the final boss, you can't use any of them.
It has costumes. Go on.
It's a solid game. I think it's fine.
How do the costumes give you like power-ups?
Yeah, it's kind of like Kid Chameleon in that respect.
I feel like,
Kid Chameleon-like is becoming a genre now.
well, kind of. I mean, that's Skull is a roguelite that ties into that mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah, costumes transforming, it's been kind of a thing. Monster.
Mario Brothers
For a long
3.
time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go buy a squirrel onesie and jump off my roof.
Wag your tail really fast.
Don't do this at home, kids. Let's see. So Stefanos85 says, did you run into the bug in Control that crashes the game when you fight the anchor boss? I'm stuck there because it crashes every time. No, actually, it didn't crash on me, although that boss did give me trouble. I'm sorry that that's happening. It's interesting that's interesting.
I played it on console. I didn't have that issue. Although the anchor boss is technically optional.
Technically. But that's 3...
I mean, you don't really get anything besides mats from it.
No, you get 3 ability points, which is really good.
Yeah, but it's not like there's a
That's
shortage
like-
of ability points in that game.
That's the best thing. Come on, that's
I
more
still
health
can't
or
believe.
whatever.
So Q didn't play Essage. He didn't fight your mirror version, and I'm so upset with him.
I'll get to it. Anyway, I think that's good for tonight, unless anybody else has anything else they want to say before we sign off.
I think I'm good. Had fun off my Saturday norm.
Yeah, thanks for coming, Nick.
Yep.
And thanks as always, Caldra.
No problem.
The people in this area, like, are these Kickstarter characters? Like, they look like.
Oh, they look very creepy.
They look very Kickstarter-y.
Yeah.
Also, apparently this place is called Awesome Town.
Yes. This game is very perky, bouncy, like happy. It's just a fun game. Like, it's not fantastic, but it's fun. So
Yeah, it's got a fun art style.
it's good to give it a little bit of air. I put it in one of the top 10s, like in the beginning or ending of it or whatever. Probably not what I'm ever going to give a video review, but it's fun. It's good. Maybe not worth the price they're charging for it, but it's good.
Imagine how steeled your nerves would have to be to run up and punch a scorpion the size of a shoebox today.
She has a squirrel costume. She's fine.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you everyone for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.